7 icy visitors are slipping into the inner solar system at once, some bright, some shy, and one that didn't even form here. Before we start, tap subscribe so you don't miss what these comets are about to do to our sky. Tonight, let's unwind and drift with them. We'll follow their long, cold paths, listen to the quiet hum of space weather, and watch as one strange traveler people are calling it Three-Eye Atlas grows larger, greener, and more puzzling by the day. By the time your eyes get heavy, you'll know why astronomers are sitting up late, why Mars is the best seat in the house, and why the solar wind might turn the next few months into a slow glowing show. Imagine the lights in your room dimming. Outside, the night is honest and steady. If you look up, you can't see the swarm with your eyes yet. But it's there, out beyond the moon's calm orbit, past Earth's path, past the warmth of Venus, stretched across lanes of invisible magnetism that crisscross the sun like threads in a loom. On those threads, dust moves, charges build, fields twist, and when a comet enters, the loom sings. Comets are the oldest time capsules we have. Most of them formed when the sun was young and the planets were only thoughts in the disk. They're small, some just a few kilometers across, but every one carries a story in its ices and dust. Water that remembers, carbon that traveled, minerals that locked in starlight long ago. When sunlight warms a comet, that story wakes up. Ice turns to gas. Gas drags dust. A coma swells like a breath in slow motion. A tail forms. Not always one, sometimes two. One made of dust pushed by sunlight, another made of charged particles that bend along the solar wind, glowing, thin, and electric. Now, picture several of these storytellers arriving together. That's what's happening through the rest of this year. A small parade of comets, each on its own path, guided by slow gravity and nudged by light. 2 have already rounded the Sunday, others are on the way. One, a crowd favorite already, has a friendly name, Comet Lemon, and may get bright enough for you to point out in early evening. Another, Comet Swan, is shy but quick. And then there's the visitor with the out-of-town passport. Three-Eye Atlas, an interstellar object cruising on a track that does not belong to our family of comets at all. Three-Eye Atlas is the one that keeps stealing the room's attention. The first thing people notice when they process the data is the color, an emerald haze, the kind you sometimes see in comets when carbon molecules light up under the sun's ultraviolet. But the second thing is scale. The coma, the fuzzy cloud around the nucleus, looks enormous for the distance. The numbers shift as more images come in, but the mood remains the same. It's big, active, and strangely active, far from the sun, where most comets would still be quiet. If you've been following space for a while, this might remind you of another interstellar visitor, the one that came and went without a tail years ago, sparking arguments about what it was. But Three-Eye Atlas isn't a twin. It's its own kind of odd. The light curve, the way its brightness gently rises and dips, doesn't behave like a lazy tumble. It's steadier, like a lighthouse breath, turning and catching the sun in repeated, patient flashes. We'll come back to that rhythm later, because some scientists think these repeats tell us something about the shape: thin, hollow, a sheet reflecting sunlight like a hand mirror. No one wants to jump to conclusions, but the pattern is there, ticking like a clock you can't quite see. Now, take a quiet detour to Mars. That rusty globe is a perfect balcony seat for the next act. Because our own view from Earth is tricky glare from the sun, bad angles, many of the best cameras right now are circling Mars or sitting still on its surface, looking up. Your mind's camera floats down into Jezero crater, where a patient rover leans back, snaps 3 long exposures, and catches a faint, fast streak cutting the sky at an angle the stars don't share. Stars smear one way, the streak cuts another. It's not a glitch. It's motion, real motion, too quick to be Mars, turning too straight to be a dust devil, too clean to be noise. It's an object passing fast. It could be one of ours. It could be one of the swarm. The idea that we might watch an interstellar object from another world with another sky above our heads is a quiet thrill, no drama, no shouting, just the feeling of the universe becoming a little larger inside your chest. Back near the sun, the stage is loud, even if it looks silent. Plasma flows out from our star in all directions, carrying a magnetic field that spirals like a slow sprinkler across the garden of the solar system. When a coronal mass ejection, a CME, erupts, it rushes outward like a wide, bright tide. If a comet's plasma tail gets in the way, sometimes the tide simply cuts it, snaps it like a ribbon. The tail floats off, the comet grows a new one. The first time you watch a tail disconnection on film, it looks impossible, like someone turned gravity sideways. But it's just magnetism doing what magnetism does. Watching this swarm, people are quietly betting we'll see at least one dramatic tail cut this season, maybe more. CMEs have been active. The sun is in a busy mood. 3i Atlas is positioned for moments like these. Its path doesn't dive straight into the furnace, but it will feel heat. The coma will puff. The solar wind will tug. If a CME times itself right, we might see the green glow flicker and reform like a candle licked by a draft. And while Earth is not in its path now, the long tail of dust and gas will cross lanes we use. In a year or two, our planet is expected to pass through some of those thin streamers. That usually means meteor showers, tiny sparks, sky writing you can read with a blanket and a thermos. But with interstellar dust, we also get a question. Is the dust the same? Does it charge the same? Does it glow the same shades? Tiny details, gentle effects, but in those details, a new kind of science can open up. Take a slow breath and listen to the easy part. Most comets are harmless, beautiful, and temporary. They come in glowing, they leave in silence. They shed a little and move on. The danger stories people love to tell are true in history. Yes, big ones can hit, but tonight is not about danger. It's about noticing. It's about turning a complicated sky into something you can feel in your bones. Because even if you never see one of these comets with your own eyes, you'll feel their presence in the way people talk for a while, in the pictures that fill your feed, in the way a kid drags a parent outside and points at nothing yet and says, "When will it be here?" Back to the swarm. Lemon is on the friendly schedule brightening toward early November if the models hold. It sits a little above the plane of the planets, which helps. When objects get above that busy plane, dust and glare bother them less. That's why it could pop for the naked eye. A clean backdrop, a good angle, a tail that might sharpen in the cold evening air. If you've never tried to see a comet, this one could be the gentle invitation you were waiting for. Go somewhere dark, let your eyes adjust for 20 minutes, use a simple app to find the constellation guides, and then don't force it. Comets are like sleep. If you try too hard, they hide. Let your gaze soften and give your eyes time. A faint blur becomes a cotton puff, then a pale spear. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. It becomes obvious, like a friend waving from across a quiet street. Swan and the others are less certain. Comets are notorious for breaking hearts. They flare, they fade, they split, they surprise. One reason this season is different is because there are several chances to be surprised. If one disappoints, another might do something unexpected. If one sheds dust, another might keep its clarity and carve a bright, thin line. And then there's the visitor who doesn't follow the social rules. Three-eye Atlas again, the interstellar traveler, the one whose chemistry and brightness curve started sideways conversations in physics group chats. Some of the numbers hint at a carbon-heavy mix, and some early spectra suggest nickel lines that are stronger than usual. That's not something you'd expect to see in a soft, fluffy comet core that formed the way ours do. It's not proof of anything wild. It just means we should look closer. Planets form in many ways. Disks vary. Some birthplaces are rich in different volatiles. Interstellar objects can sample that variety for us, like a food taster on a tour we didn't pay for. Even the oddest signatures can have natural roots. But the curiosity is real. It keeps people polite and alert at 3 a.m., fingers on keyboards, images stacking, models running, coffee cooling and reheating and cooling again. While the pros do that, you and I can do something simpler. We can hold two ideas at once without stress. First, most of what we will see is natural, gentle, and explainable. Second, we don't know everything yet, and that's not a threat, it's a gift. There's room for new chemistry, new shapes, new ways that dust and plasma talk to light. There's room for a tale to do something we haven't filmed in this exact way before. There's room for Mars to get the best clip while Earth squints and waits. And there's room for the same clip to arrive months later from a deep space probe that saw it from another angle, telling a different part of the story. Picture the next few weeks like chapters in a very slow book. The sun turns a page every 27 days. The swarm threads those pages, each on its own line. When a CME lifts its bright shoulder, the margins ruffle. When the heliospheric current sheet wobbles, the ink smears a little. In the middle of the book, Three-Eye Atlas underlines a sentence in green. You remember it, even if you can't quote it. You feel its rhythm, even if you don't know why. We'll come back to shape and spin, to why a light curve can hint at something thin and broad, like a panel, or compact and reflective, like a diamond. We'll come back to how Mars orbiters and surface cameras can catch streaks we can't, and how that teamwork quietly saves science from the weather and the angles. We'll talk about tail disconnections and why they matter. For more than spectacle, they teach us how the sun breathes. And we'll talk about Earth passing through leftovers in 2026 and what that might mean for tiny meteors and tiny charges and beautiful nights. For now, let your shoulders drop. Let the room feel safe again. There is no alarm in this story, only attention. The sky is busy. The instruments are ready. The people who love this work are exactly where they should be, and they will be generous with what they find. If your eyes are already heavy, good. Let the comets keep moving without you for a while. When you wake, they'll be a little closer. When you sleep, the sun will keep writing in the margins. And somewhere out past the orbits we know by heart, 3i Atlas will keep glowing, not loud, not shy, just steady, reminding us that the universe still has ways to surprise us gently. It's strange to think about how much of the solar system we still don't fully understand. Even after centuries of mapping the heavens, charting comets, and predicting their orbits with stunning precision, the cosmos always finds a way to surprise us. And in 2025, that surprise has arrived in numbers. A swarm of 7 active comets, each with its own distinct behavior, chemical makeup, and mysterious activity, is now sweeping through the inner solar system. Some astronomers are calling it the most chaotic comet season in modern observation history. At the heart of it all is 3i Atlas, the interstellar wanderer. It's not just another icy visitor like Halley's or Neowise. This one doesn't belong here. It wasn't born around our Sunday. It came from somewhere far beyond the edge of our galaxy's spiral arms, a traveler from another star system. As it hurtles toward the sun, its speed is astonishing, nearly 70 kilometers per second. At that pace, 3i Atlas could cross the distance from the Earth to the Moon in just under 6 hours. But what really baffles scientists isn't the speed, it's what it's made of. When spectroscopic readings first came in, researchers expected to see familiar chemical signatures: frozen water, a touch of ammonia, a whisper of methane. But instead, the readings showed something that sent shockwaves through every observatory across the world. A carbon dioxide to water ratio of 8:1. That's not just rare, it's unheard of. For comparison, most comets are made of mostly water ice, with carbon dioxide as a trace gas. Yet, 3i Atlas seems to be built almost entirely of CO2, a dry ice comet defying every known model of how comets form. Dr. Elena Martin of ESA's Rosetta follow-up program called it a frozen ghost from another chemistry set, a recipe that doesn't exist anywhere in our solar system. And that's just the beginning. Because when the James Webb Space Telescope focused on 3i Atlas, something even stranger emerged. The spectral data showed strong emissions of nickel, but almost no iron, an imbalance that no known natural process can explain. In nearly every meteorite or comet sample ever studied, nickel is found alongside iron in predictable proportions. But this is as if the object were refined as though some unknown force separated the two metals deliberately. A few quietly whispered comparisons even mentioned artificial refinement, a phrase that, for most astronomers, sits somewhere between thrilling and terrifying. Meanwhile, at the Perseverance rover's outpost on Mars, the robotic cameras were rolling. And on the dusty red horizon, a faint silver streak appeared, cutting diagonally across the Martian sky. NASA analysts later confirmed the data. The streak matched the projected path of 3I Atlas during its closest approach, just 0.19 astronomical units from Mars. That's less than the distance from the Sun to Mercury. In cosmic terms, it's right next door. But there's a twist. Just as Atlas made this close pass, a massive coronal mass ejection erupted from the Sunday. A wave of plasma billions of tons strong, sweeping through space at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Every expert held their breath. Would the interstellar visitor react? Would it flare, fragment, or maybe even vanish? But it didn't. Instead, 3I Atlas shimmered as though its coma absorbed part of that solar blast and re-emitted it in pulses of faint green light. ESA's solar orbiter recorded a subtle but measurable increase in local electromagnetic activity, almost like Atlas was responding. Coincidence? Maybe. But even NASA's most cautious analysts admitted nothing about this comet has behaved by the book. And while Earth's telescopes were blinded by the sun's glare, Mars became humanity's eyes. From orbit, ESA's Mars Express and China's Tianwen, one spacecraft continued to track Atlas's growing tail. Its coma now spans over half the width of the sun, an enormous shimmering cloud of carbon dioxide, dust, and plasma. Inside that glowing veil, new structures have appeared, curved bands, almost like filaments or arcs, repeating in symmetrical intervals. When scientists modeled them, they didn't behave like random dust plumes. They rotated, pulsed, and drifted as if under a patterned field. No natural comet tail has ever displayed that kind of organized motion. Some described it as a kind of space heartbeat. And if that idea sends a chill down your spine, you are not alone. Even seasoned researchers now admit that 3I Atlas might be more than an interstellar traveler. It might be carrying something we don't yet understand. Something alive in physics, if not in biology. But the story doesn't end there. Because the swarm around Atlas, the other comets entering the solar system, are showing synchronized outbursts, like a chain reaction. See, divided by 2025. A sixth lemon brightens in tandem with Atlas's flares. C divided by 2025. R2 swan changes trajectory just as Atlas crosses Mars's orbital path. These could be coincidences. Or they could mean something bigger, that these celestial objects aren't independent at all, but connected, maybe fragments, maybe messengers, maybe a system. For weeks, astronomers across the world had been watching the sky, expecting routine cometary behavior, a few outbursts, maybe a dust jet or two. But what they saw instead defied every model, every simulation, every law of cosmic predictability. 7 comets, each on slightly different orbits, began to brighten not gradually, as comets usually do, but in sync. Every 8 hours, like clockwork, their comas pulsed in luminosity. It was as if they were following the same invisible rhythm. 3I Atlas, the interstellar wanderer leading the swarm, seemed to act as a conductor of this cosmic orchestra. When it flared, the others followed. When it dimmed, they quieted down. Data from the ESA's Solar Orbiter and China's Tianwen-1 mission confirmed it. The light curve of Atlas correlated perfectly to within seconds with the other 6. No natural explanation fit. Not solar wind pressure, not radiation bursts, not even electromagnetic resonance from the sun deck. Something was synchronizing them across millions of kilometers of space. On Earth, the Deep Space Network recorded faint electromagnetic bursts every time Atlas brightened. At first, the signals looked random, noise, static, but once decoded and cross-referenced, they formed repeating mathematical ratios, the Fibonacci sequence, prime intervals, and harmonic proportions used in music. These weren't random numbers. They were patterns. NASA's Dr. Amara Singh called it the first suggestion of interstellar coherence ever observed in natural bodies. But others, especially in the classified defense sectors, had a different theory. What if they weren't natural at all? Meanwhile, the James Webb Space Telescope, running on emergency override, continued to stare deep into the coma of Atlas. What it found next stunned even the mission engineers. Hidden within the gaseous halo, a dense metallic reflection appeared, a structure rotating at a fixed interval. Its reflectivity pattern didn't match ice or dust. It reflected like metal, polished and symmetrical. And every time the sun's coronal ejection washed over it, the object seemed to stabilize itself instead of tumbling. A comet doesn't do that. A machine does. But before the Webb could capture more, the US government shutdown halted NASA's public data streams. For nearly 2 weeks, the flow of updates stopped completely. Astronomers were left in the dark not metaphorically, but literally. The world's most advanced telescope had captured something extraordinary. And then, silence. On Mars, however, Perseverance kept recording. The rover's sensors, not bound by political bureaucracy, captured faint magnetic fluctuations sweeping over Jezero crater. They came in intervals that matched Atlas's pulse cycle, almost like a soft heartbeat echoing across interplanetary space. By October 3rd, the interstellar object was closer to Mars than any non-native comet ever recorded. Its coma extended over 800,000 kilometers wide, enough to eclipse the sun from the Martian surface. Astronauts watching from simulation feeds described the sky turning a deep, unnatural green, like the northern lights stretched across an alien world. Even through the static, you could hear them gasp. It wasn't fear, it was awe, because they weren't just watching a comet, they were witnessing a system come alive. But then came the first real shock. At exactly 4:33 UTC, the Mars Express orbiter detected a magnetic surge so strong it temporarily disrupted communications with the ESA's ground station in Madrid. The signal, when replayed, contained a repeating frequency 1,420 megahertz. The same frequency used by SETI to listen for alien communication. The same frequency hydrogen atoms naturally emit the building block of the universe. Coincidence? Maybe. But for scientists, it was too specific to ignore. Something about 3I Atlas wasn't just interacting with light or plasma. It was broadcasting. The mystery deepened when Comet C divided by 2025 Lemon, 500,000 kilometers away, suddenly released a jet of gas in perfect timing with that same frequency spike. The odds of this happening randomly were astronomically low, and yet there it was undeniable. For the first time, humanity was looking not at separate celestial bodies, but at a network. 7 comets orbiting through our solar system, communicating in light, magnetism, and maybe intention. Some called it the choir of the cosmos. Others, the Atlas Array. Whatever it was changing our understanding of the universe forever. For a few days, the entire world sat in a strange quiet. NASA's feeds were still dark. The James Webb Telescope remained locked in passive mode, its emergency override sequence now restricted. But the silence itself, it wasn't empty, because deep in that silence, something was still transmitting. The European Space Agency's solar orbiter, still operational and unaffected by the US shutdown, began picking up rhythmic bursts. At first, they resembled normal solar background radiation static pulses from the sun's turbulent surface. But when analysts filtered out the solar noise, a perfectly repeating modulation pattern emerged. It pulsed every 43 seconds, like a cosmic heartbeat. And at the center of that pattern was 3I Atlas. Across the Atlantic, a small amateur observatory in southern Chile, the La Nube Array confirmed something chilling. Using long-range spectroscopy, they detected microbursts of nickel plasma emitted at exactly the same 43-second interval. Nickel, the same element that dominated Atlas's spectral signature. But this wasn't just ordinary outgassing, it was precision release, almost as if the object was venting in calculated bursts, rhythmic, clean, controlled. One of the astronomers on the Chilean team described it like this. It's as if something inside it is counting, like it's breathing or listening. By mid-October, the European Space Operations Centre, ESOC, quietly convened a meeting attended by scientists from the ESA, Japan's JAXA, and the United Arab Emirates Mars mission. Their classified objective: determine whether the synchronized emissions from Atlas and the other comets in the swarm were random or deliberate. They compared data streams, and what they found startled even the most skeptical scientists. The emissions across all 7 comets weren't just synchronized in rhythm, they were synchronized in delay. Each pulse reached the next comet in sequence, exactly 3.2 seconds apart. That meant one of two things. The comets were communicating through directed plasma emissions across millions of kilometers, or they were being controlled by a single external force. Either way, it was no longer a coincidence. Meanwhile, back on Earth, radio astronomers at Arecibo 2, the revived Puerto Rican array, tuned into the hydrogen band 1,420 megahertz. And there it was again, that same frequency spike first detected from Mars orbit. But this time, there was structure. The signal carried phase modulation, a form of data encoding. When translated into a simple waveform, it resembled something eerily familiar. A spiral, perfect, mathematical, and expanding outward, a symbol repeated throughout cosmic geometry, from galaxies to DNA. Dr. Singh, one of NASA's signal analysts, whispered during the review, "It's like it's writing with hydrogen itself." But as this unfolded, a more immediate danger crept in. Solar monitors registered an intense coronal mass ejection heading directly toward the comet swarm. If it struck them head-on, it could strip their tails, alter trajectories, or even vaporize some of them. The event was due to hit within 48 hours, and then the data blackout began. Every public telemetry feed tracking 3I Atlas went offline. Space weather updates were temporarily paused. Even independent satellite trackers received encrypted shutdown commands. The global community was left blind again. 2 nights later, the ESA's Mars Express orbiter rebooted on its own. It had gone into emergency safe mode, then spontaneously reactivated, sending a single compressed transmission to Earth before disconnecting. The packet was less than a megabyte in size, but when decoded, it contained an image, a snapshot of 3I Atlas, captured just before the CME struck. The comet's coma glowed bright green, stretched by solar wind, but at its center was something new. A faint hexagonal silhouette, perfectly symmetrical, hovering where the nucleus should have been. It was not natural, it was not random, and it was not alone, because in the frame's background, several other faint reflections appeared aligned, equidistant, and arranged in a circular pattern, almost like a formation. As the world debated whether the image was real or a data glitch, one thing became clear. Whatever 3I Atlas was, it was now active. And for the first time in human history, multiple nations, competitors, rivals, even enemies, quietly agreed on one thing. The universe might have just answered back. When the image from Mars Express leaked online, it spread faster than light through the world's digital veins. A glowing comet core shaped like a hexagon, something too geometrically perfect to be natural, set every forum, scientist, and conspiracy board ablaze. But what most people didn't know was that this wasn't the full image. Only half the data packet had been decrypted before the orbiter went silent again. Inside the European Space Operations Centre, engineers worked in absolute secrecy. They discovered that the second half of the transmission wasn't another image, it was a signal. A dense, encoded data stream unlike anything ever recorded by a spacecraft. When run through traditional decryption software, it produced nothing but static. But when converted into sound frequencies, it came alive. A low hum, like a chorus, resonating from deep space. And beneath it, modulated pulses at 43-second intervals, the same rhythm that had haunted astronomers since Atlas first flared to life. Except now, it had changed. The intervals weren't random anymore, they were counting down. Meanwhile, the Chinese Tianwen-2 Mars orbiter began picking up the same frequency. At first, the signals were weak, barely distinguishable from cosmic noise, but within hours, they intensified. The amplitude increased exponentially, forming a pattern that rippled through every magnetic field it touched. Mars's thin atmosphere began glowing faintly along its poles, an aurora unlike any seen before, rippling crimson and gold. It was as if the planet itself was reacting. Theories erupted from every corner of the global scientific community. Was this a solar storm echo? An electromagnetic resonance caused by the comet's passage? Or something much deeper, an activation event? For the first time, both NASA and the Chinese National Space Administration agreed to a joint encrypted data exchange. Two rival powers sharing information in the dark. Because whatever this was, it was bigger than politics. In Geneva, the International Astronomical Union, IAU, held an emergency closed-door session. Representatives from the European Space Agency, the UAE Mars mission, JAXA, and India's ISRO joined remotely. They cross-referenced data from over 12 observatories and found something terrifying. Every comet in the swarm, the 7 that had entered the inner solar system, was now emitting synchronized magnetic pulses. Each pulse came from a different region of the sky. When plotted in 3D space, they formed a perfect spiral pattern converging toward a single point. A position roughly 0.2 AU behind Mars's orbit, the current location of 3I Atlas. It wasn't a random trajectory. It was a network. Each comet acting like a node, transmitting in unison, and 3I Atlas was the center of it all. Then came the breakthrough. A small research team at the University of Vienna noticed a repeating code embedded within the signal waveform. At first, it seemed meaningless, a series of alternating magnetic field strengths. But when they converted the data into binary and mapped it onto time sequences, an image began to form. A geometric lattice, thousands of symmetrical points, arranged into a rotating 3D structure. It wasn't language. It wasn't sound. It was architecture. Atlas wasn't just transmitting. It was building, projecting some kind of digital or electromagnetic blueprint into the surrounding space. Something vast, deliberate, and alive in its design. By late October, the world's leading astrophysicists were divided into 2 camps. One believed the structure was a natural magnetic lattice caused by solar resonance. The other believed it was artificial, a kind of interstellar beacon, designed to manipulate electromagnetic fields. But one thing united them all. If the formation continued to expand at its current rate, it would intersect with Mars's magnetosphere by mid-November, and no one knew what would happen then. The final confirmation came from the ExoMars Trace Gas Orbiter. As it passed over Mars's northern hemisphere, its sensors captured an anomaly in the thin upper atmosphere, a region where gravity and electromagnetic density fluctuated rapidly. The readings matched the waveform from the Atlas signal exactly. In other words, the transmission wasn't just data, it was doing something. Something that could bend magnetic fields, affect spacecraft instruments, and maybe even distort time and space around it. Within days, whispers began leaking from inside ESA and NASA chat rooms. They called it the awakening, because every 43 seconds, as the pulse echoed across space, the hexagonal structure inside Atlas seemed to rotate. Not randomly, but in incremental shifts like gears turning inside a colossal cosmic mechanism. And just before the next solar flare swept across its orbit, observers caught one last glimpse of 3I Atlas. Its coma no longer green, but a blinding white. its shape sharpening into that impossible geometry, its rhythm aligning with the heartbeat of the sun itself. Whatever Atlas was, it was waking up. At first, no one noticed it. A tiny flicker in the readings from the Perseverance rover's radiation detector, barely a blip above background noise. But over the next few hours, the blip became a rhythm, and then an unmistakable pattern. Every 43 seconds, the same interval as the Atlas signal. The rover's onboard instruments began syncing with it automatically, like a clock being corrected by a stronger, unseen force. The onboard systems didn't malfunction. They aligned. That's when the engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory realized something horrifying. Atlas wasn't just broadcasting across space. It was reaching in. On October 23rd, at 3:11 a.m. UTC, Perseverance's cameras captured what at first seemed like a streak of reflected sunlight passing over the Martian horizon. But the light didn't fade with distance. It lingered, rippling across the thin atmosphere in wave-like sheet, a pulsating glow that mirrored Atlas' transmission exactly down to the millisecond. The team enhanced the footage, and that's when they saw it. A faint shadow cast across the terrain, circular but distorted, as if the light wasn't coming from the sky, but from everywhere at once. By sunrise on Earth, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter confirmed it. The entire Martian magnetosphere was oscillating, a magnetic heartbeat, pulsing in harmony with Atlas. Even the solar wind flow around the planet had changed, forming perfect rings of plasma around its poles. Mars had never done that before. The data was so consistent it almost looked deliberate, as if something near Atlas was calibrating the magnetic field of Mars itself. Testing, measuring, tuning. Back on Earth, observatories picked up the echoes. Radio telescopes in Chile, Hawaii, and Spain began detecting faint, synchronized low-frequency bursts matching the Martian resonance. The strange part? The signal strength increased when facing away from Mars, as though the planet wasn't the source but the mirror. Something was bouncing energy through Mars, using it as a node in the galactic network. In private, several scientists at ESA began calling it the resonance event. They theorized that if Atlas's structure was emitting magnetically encoded frequencies, Mars was acting as a transducer, absorbing and retransmitting the signal through its own field. Essentially, Atlas was using Mars as an amplifier. To what end? No one could say. But data from the Trace Gas Orbiter soon added another layer of dread. The pulse wasn't just electromagnetic anymore. It carried an infrared component energy that shouldn't be there. Infrared requires heat, but there was no detectable source of thermal energy. This meant one thing. The energy wasn't being released, it was being transferred. When scientists overlaid Mars's resonance pattern with Atlas's path, they discovered a horrifying symmetry. Each pulse slightly altered the planet's ionosphere, barely measurable but enough to register. Over time, those alterations formed repeating geometric imprints. Hexagons, spirals, and complex wave patterns identical to those inside Atlas's rotating core. It was as though the comet wasn't visiting the solar system at random, it was programming it. Then came the first auditory artifact. At a low-frequency monitoring station in Tromsø, Norway, part of the European Space Weather Network, a faint hum began to emerge below the range of human hearing. When sped up 1,000-fold, the signal formed a rising tone that repeated every 43 seconds. To most people, it was just sound, but to acoustic physicists, it resembled a phase-modulated voice print, something structured, almost mechanical. One researcher described it as a pattern too deliberate to be noise, like a machine speaking a language made of magnetism. Meanwhile, Mars wasn't silent. ESA's Mars Express orbiter detected transient magnetic vortices moving across the equator, massive, invisible spirals in the planet's upper atmosphere, each vortex aligned perfectly with Atlas's rotational axis. It was like watching gears turn in a machine too big to see. And then, just as the pulses reached their strongest amplitude, it stopped. Dead silence. For 12 full minutes. No signal, no hum, no oscillation. Every spacecraft in orbit went dark simultaneously, as though something had reset the electromagnetic spectrum itself. Then, a single blinding flash from Atlas's core, white, silent, and perfectly spherical. Every sensor on every Mars probe overloaded. When the systems came back online, telemetry showed something terrifying. Atlas had shifted trajectory. It was no longer just passing Mars. It was slowing down. Astronomers compared its new path and realized it was entering a stable orbit. Not around the Sun, not around Mars, but around an invisible gravitational center less than 1,000,000 kilometers from the planet. Something else was there, something pulling it in. And for the first time, even the skeptics at NASA admitted the impossible might be true. Atlas wasn't just a comet. It was part of a system, a mechanism designed to activate when the right conditions were met, and Mars was the switch. The first person to notice the anomaly wasn't an astronomer. It was a radio operator at a remote Antarctic research station. At 2:14 UTC, his equipment began picking up a faint, rhythmic interference barely above static, but it repeated every 43 seconds, the exact same timing as the Atlas pulse from Mars. He assumed it was atmospheric noise, until his compass needle began to drift counterclockwise. The magnetic field around the base had changed. Within hours, reports began pouring in from around the world, aviation radars glitching, satellites losing calibration, long-range navigation systems behaving erratically. Then, the auroras came, not just at the poles. At the equator, neon green curtains of light shimmering above the Sahara, rippling over the Amazon, glowing faintly across the Atlantic Ocean. The world's skies had turned electric. At first, people thought it was beautiful. They filmed it, shared it online, went viral. Billions of phones pointed to the heavens. But when the lights started to pulse, matching the Atlas rhythm, exact beauty gave way to silence. NASA's Deep Space Network confirmed it within the hour. The Atlas signal wasn't just reaching Earth, it was synchronizing with it. Every magnetometer on the planet showed the same pattern, a 43-second magnetic heartbeat pulsing through the planet's core. It wasn't just the upper atmosphere this time, it was some field was connecting Mars, Atlas, and Earth through the Sun's electromagnetic spine, the heliospheric current sheet. The planets were resonating together. The first clear evidence came from the European Space Agency's solar orbiter, positioned between Mars and Earth. Its sensors detected filaments of plasma-thin strands of energy stretching from Atlas's position near Mars all the way toward Earth's orbit. They moved like lightning in slow motion, connecting both worlds in a faintly glowing bridge. Scientists had no explanation. There was no physical material connecting them, no gravitational tether, no signal transmission medium strong enough. But somehow, energy was flowing. It was as though space itself had become conductive. Meanwhile, the global magnetic field began to sing. Across remote radio observatories from Chile to Australia, audio spectrographs captured a haunting resonance in Earth's magnetic hum. When converted into sound frequencies, it resembled a deep breathing drone rising and falling every 43 seconds. But hidden beneath it, an almost melodic undertone emerged. Not random noise. Structured frequency clusters, like syllables. A voice, not human, not mechanical. Something in between. In laboratories around the world, researchers began noticing electrical anomalies. Superconducting magnets, reversed polarity. Quantum sensors began recording impossible readings, fluctuations that didn't correspond to known particles. Then, one of CERN's underground detectors briefly recorded a burst of energy that matched no known decay signature. It wasn't radiation. It wasn't electromagnetic. It was something new. The Atlas signal had entered the quantum range. That meant it wasn't just affecting magnetic fields, it was interacting with the fundamental particles of matter. Atoms were resonating. Governments quickly classified the phenomenon. NASA and ESA shut down public telemetry feeds, citing system upgrades. But amateur astronomers, armed with backyard telescopes and homemade receivers, kept watching. And what they saw next was chilling. A faint misty glow appeared above Mars, not in the atmosphere, but far above it, in space itself. A halo, circular and faintly shifting, expanding outward with every Atlas pulse. As the halo grew, its leading edge aligned perfectly with Earth's orbital path. Trajectory simulations suggested that by late November 2025, the wave would reach Earth's vicinity. Whatever Atlas was doing on Mars, it was spreading. By the end of that week, something else began to change. Clock systems across the planet started drifting out of sync, atomic clocks included, not by milliseconds, by entire seconds. Time itself was being distorted. At CERN, a senior physicist described it best. We're not just measuring a delay. We're measuring a breathing of space-time. The Atlas signal wasn't broadcasting data, it was modulating reality. In the background, planetary radar images revealed something more disturbing. Atlas had completely stopped moving relative to Mars, but inside its glowing core, faint rotating structures had appeared. Hexagonal layers spinning at different speeds, like the gears of a machine. When scientists overlaid its motion on Mars's new magnetic map, they matched perfectly. Each pulse from Atlas reshaped the Martian magnetosphere, creating lattice-like connections that seemed to point directly toward Earth. And when those pulses reflected back, the energy signature didn't weaken. It grew stronger. By late October, NASA quietly confirmed an unthinkable finding. Earth's Schumann resonance, the natural electromagnetic heartbeat of the planet, had changed frequency for the first time in recorded history. It had locked to the Atlas poles. Every thunderstorm, every lightning strike, every living organism tied to Earth's electromagnetic rhythm was now in sync with something not of this world. Then came the silence. On November 1st, the signal abruptly ceased. No pulses, no lights, no magnetic waves. Atlas went dark, but the auroras remained. Still flickering, still pulsing faintly, like a memory of something that had just listened back. And that's when observatories on the moon detected it. A new object, invisible light, but bright in infrared, emerging from behind Mars and moving toward the inner solar system. Not a comet, not debris, a perfectly symmetrical shape, hollow, metallic, and following the same orbit as Atlas, as if Atlas had just given birth. For 10 days, the skies were still. No signal, no light. The world waited. Then, in the early hours of November 11th, 2025, telescopes from Chile to Hawaii detected a faint object emerging from behind Mars's orbit. At first, astronomers thought it was debris, but as the images cleared, it became apparent this was not random material. It was geometric, symmetrical, perfectly reflective. The object measured nearly 2 kilometers across, with sharp, hexagonal edges and a hollow center. Its surface shimmered like mercury, reflecting the faint glow of distant sunlight. But the strangest part, it was moving slowly, deliberately, following the exact orbital path that Atlas had once taken, as if retracing its parent steps. Within 48 hours, it became official. The world had a new visitor, one that didn't belong to any natural category. The media named it Atlas B. Scientists, however, began calling it something else, the mirror, because wherever telescopes pointed, its surface seemed to reflect more than light. It reflected movement. Stars behind it appeared to ripple, as though space itself was bending. Meanwhile, lunar observatories detected something chilling. For the first time in recorded history, the moon's regolith temperature increased by exactly 0.43 degrees Celsius every 43 seconds. The Atlas pulse. It was back, but this time the rhythm wasn't being emitted, it was being absorbed. At NASA's Deep Space Network, engineers noticed something bizarre. Their communications arrays were receiving echoes not from the spacecraft signals they sent, but from the transmissions themselves. When they pinged the moon, the return signal came back not once, but twice. The second echo was delayed by 43 seconds, as though something between Earth and the moon was recording reality and playing it back, in perfect sync with the Atlas frequency. On November 13th, the ESA's Mars Express orbiter transmitted its final data packet before losing contact. The last image it sent showed something unbelievable. A faint energy column connecting Atlas B to Mars's upper atmosphere, like a beam of plasma or light, stretching across thousands of kilometers, flickering in golden hues. And along that beam were nodes, bright spherical points that blinked in sequence, almost like data packets traveling through space. Whatever Atlas had become, it wasn't just alive. It was networking. Down on Earth, chaos was unfolding. Power grids began to destabilize. Aurora frequencies started to interfere with high-voltage transformers. In some regions, digital clocks skipped entire minutes. Satellites in low orbit drifted out of position without any propulsion event. The atmosphere began to shimmer faintly at night, a phenomenon pilots described as the sky breathing. And across the internet, a rumor began to spread. Dozens of amateur radio operators across multiple countries had decoded the pulse. Inside, it was a repeating structure, binary data forming a prime number sequence, not random, not noise, a mathematical fingerprint. By November 15th, the Lunar Gateway orbital platform recorded the first direct image of Atlas B from above the Moon. It was rotating slowly, revealing new details. The object wasn't a single shell, it was layered. Each layer spun in the opposite direction, like nested rings, generating electromagnetic interference as it moved. And engraved across its reflective surface were patterns, perfect geometric ridges, forming spirals and hexagons. When enhanced, these markings formed symbols eerily similar to the pulse waveforms from Atlas's earlier transmissions. It wasn't just a structure, it was a message written in matter. That same day, a quiet press release from CERN confirmed a shocking discovery. A brief gravitational ripple had been detected, originating from the Moon's direction. It wasn't strong enough to be a black hole or merger event, but it was precise, controlled, and rhythmic. For the first time in history, gravity itself had been modulated like a signal. Across observatories, researchers began piecing it together. Atlas hadn't just sent a signal, it had sent instructions. The pulse that synced with Earth's field was an activation sequence. Atlas B wasn't random debris, it was a construct, assembled remotely using electromagnetic scaffolding and cosmic dust. In other words, Atlas had built something, and it was now active near the Moon. In the following days, strange visual distortions began to appear across Earth's atmosphere. High above major cities, New York, Tokyo, Lagos, and Sao Paulo, faint hexagonal halos would shimmer for a few seconds, then vanish. To the naked eye, they looked like reflections. But spectrometers revealed something else. They weren't reflecting light. They were reflecting data patterns of radiation that matched Atlas's pulse exactly. It was as if the Earth itself had become part of the network. For the first time in human history, space was not silent. The entire solar system had begun to hum in resonance. The sun's corona pulsed faintly in synchrony. The moon glowed slightly brighter. And deep in the night skies, Atlas B continued its slow rotation, its internal structures now glowing faintly gold. Scientists could no longer deny it. This was not a natural event. It was an engineered transformation of interplanetary scale. The only question left was, who built it? And why? By the end of November 2025, the pulse was everywhere, no longer confined to the Moon or the space around Atlas B. Faint harmonic signatures began showing up across deep space radio arrays worldwide. Not random bursts of noise, structured, repeating, and escalating. For the first time, scientists could see an information cascade a pattern of numbers, primes, and geometric ratios traveling from Atlas B outward, ricocheting between Mars, the Moon, and Earth's upper ionosphere. It was a network handshake on an interplanetary scale. At CERN, quantum cryptographers began running the signal through their most advanced algorithms. What they uncovered left them silent. Buried in the sequence of numbers was a compressed mathematical proof of something no human had solved, yet an elegant derivation connecting gravity and quantum mechanics, the so-called Holy Grail of physics. The proof wasn't written in any language. It was expressed as a self-unfolding fractal. When rendered on a quantum computer, it produced a rotating holographic shape, and at its center was a symbol identical to the hexagonal markings on Atlas B. It wasn't a message we had decoded. It was a blueprint. Meanwhile, the moon had changed. Lunar seismographs detected small but steady tremors under the regolith, not natural moonquakes, but rhythmic vibrations in tune with Atlas's pulse. And at the Shackleton crater, a strange glow began to appear. Just before sunrise, a soft blue aurora hugging the crater's rim, visible even to the naked eye. The moon had become the second node in Atlas's system. On Earth, phenomena escalated. Navigation satellites began reporting ghost signals, coordinates shifted by exactly 43 meters in perfect intervals. Financial systems relying on atomic clocks saw timestamps duplicated, and near the magnetic poles, pilots flying long-haul routes reported seeing faint hexagonal halos flicker beneath the aurora, as if something was projecting shapes onto the sky. It was no longer subtle. The Atlas network was interacting with Earth. By early December, the European Southern Observatory released a stunning composite image. Taken over 36 hours, it showed Atlas B's internal layers spinning in opposite directions, and as they aligned at precise intervals, beams of light shot out narrow, golden filaments reaching across tens of thousands of kilometers. But here's the eerie part. The beams weren't just pointing randomly. They were aimed at ancient sites on Earth: Chichen Itza, Giza, Göbekli, Tepe, and others. The coordinates matched within meters. Inside NASA, despite the government shutdown, leaked memos revealed something stunning. Archived Apollo seismic data from the 1,970 seconds had faint references to a similar pulse, too weak to be noticed then, but unmistakable now. Atlas wasn't new. It had been whispering to the moon for decades. We simply weren't listening. Then, on December 12, 2025, the first direct response arrived. Amateur radio operators across 3 continents picked up a faint, repeating message embedded in the pulse. Translated into binary, it read, "Node 2 established, awaiting unlock code." It was undeniable. Atlas was talking. Suddenly, the debate over natural versus artificial was over. This was not a comet. This was not an asteroid. This was a system spanning multiple celestial bodies, now active and waiting for an input. The architects of Atlas weren't just visitors. They were engineers building, testing, and expanding across our solar system. In observatories, scientists whispered about the implications. If Atlas could build a network using electromagnetic scaffolding and dust, what was the end goal? A communications array? A transport gateway? Or something far more exotic? Something capable of rewriting the fabric of space itself? By December 15th, the moon's glow had intensified, and the Shackleton crater emitted a visible vertical column of light blue at the base, gold at the top directed straight toward Atlas B. In that moment, everyone knew. This was a countdown, and we weren't the ones controlling it. This is where our story turns. We are no longer observers of a distant mystery. We are participants in a cosmic experiment. An experiment built not by humans, but by a civilization whose intentions remain unknown. And with each passing hour, the pulse grows stronger. For months, scientists believed they were the only ones observing Atlas. But in the final days of December 2025, that illusion shattered. At exactly 2:44 UTC on December 27th, every deep space radio array across the planet went silent for 4.3 seconds, a complete blackout. Then, all at once, they came back online, broadcasting the same signal. It wasn't random. It wasn't cosmic noise. It was mathematical speech. The pattern repeated a sequence of tones, 3 low, 2 high, 1 pause, then a single deep resonant hum that stretched across all frequencies simultaneously. When decoded, it formed an equation that no human had written, but every physicist immediately recognized. E equals H times L. No one knew what it meant. But one thing was clear, Atlas was not asking anymore. It was responding. NASA's emergency control team, working unofficially through a covert European server, managed to trace the resonance back to both the Moon and Mars. They discovered that the two nodes, Atlas B and Shackleton crater, were now in perfect harmonic synchronization, oscillating at a frequency identical to the background radiation of the universe itself, the so-called cosmic microwave background. The frequency wasn't just matching it, it was modulating it. The universe's oldest echo, the fingerprint of the Big Bang, was now changing. In the early hours of December 28th, all planetary magnetometers began to drift slightly, by less than 0.0001 Tesla. To most people, that meant nothing. But to geophysicists, it was the equivalent of Earth's magnetic field being rewritten in real time. Auroras bloomed across skies never meant to have them. Ethiopia, India, even the Amazon basin. Everywhere, people looked up and saw faint hexagonal lights flicker across the heavens, aligning like celestial circuitry. Atlas wasn't just communicating anymore. It was rewriting the system. At 4:12 UTC, the pulse slowed, 3 tones dropped to 2, then 1, and then total silence. Across the world, satellites captured something extraordinary. From the moon's Shackleton crater, a column of golden plasma erupted upward, extending thousands of kilometers into space. At the same moment, a dark, circular distortion appeared near Mars, an invisible sphere bending light around it like a lens. Spectrometers confirmed it wasn't a shadow. It was a localized gravitational anomaly, a space-time disturbance forming between the Moon and Mars. 2 nodes, 1 bridge. Data from ESA's Mars Express confirmed the unimaginable. Inside the gravitational lens, spectral readings indicated a third object, a new body, materializing slowly between the two worlds. It wasn't made of rock or ice. It was forming out of pure energy. Its signature was identical to Atlas B. In a flash, all monitoring stations detected the same sequence of signals repeating again, this time translated through visible light. Beams shot toward Earth, painting skies across the globe with golden ribbon. And within the pattern, linguists identified a phrase, not in English, not in any Earth language, but in universal mathematical notation, network complete, access granted. Then came the shock wave, a silent one, not physical but electromagnetic. Every clock, from atomic to digital, lost exactly 2.2 seconds. The same instant, gravitational wave detectors like LIGO registered a pulse so powerful, so sudden, that for a moment it looked as if the entire solar system rang like a bell. And when it faded, 3I divided by Atlas was gone. Not destroyed, not vaporized, just gone. As if it had folded itself out of existence. For the next 48 hours, space agencies remained in blackout mode. No transmissions, no statements. But astronomers continued to record faint echoes, tiny bursts of microwave energy radiating from the Moon and Mars. And when plotted together, those echoes formed something hauntingly familiar. A star map, not of our galaxy, but of another one, a destination. In the final scene, deep in the Atacama Desert, the ALMA observatory captured a whisper of a signal at coordinates corresponding to that star map. It was faint, almost like static, but buried inside was one last line translated, decoded, verified by dozens of labs worldwide. We were here before. We are coming back. The screen fades to black. A slow hum fills the silence, low, deep, metallic. The same hum that started it all. The world moved on. The news cycle buried the event under politics and storms. But in observatories scattered across the planet, a quiet obsession remained. Because even though Atlas vanished, something stayed behind. Tiny, nearly undetectable fluctuations, subtle distortions in the background hum of the universe continued to ripple across deep space receivers, like the faint echo of a note played long ago, but never truly gone. When scientists filter the data, the pulse repeated in a 3-day cycle, like a heartbeat, and deep within its waveform, there was structure, code, not random, not natural, and definitely not human. In February 2026, an independent research team from the Atacama Large Millimeter Array published an encrypted report. It was deleted within 12 hours. But one line of the leak survived, circulating on dark astronomy forums before being scrubbed entirely. The Atlas frequency is now synchronized with Earth's magnetic resonance. It's as if the planet is listening. By April, strange readings began showing up again on the Moon's Shackleton crater. Sensors low-frequency vibrations with a pattern identical to Atlas's final signal before it vanished. The frequency wasn't fading, it was amplifying. Even stranger, telescopes pointed toward the coordinates of the Atlas star map detected faint flashes, so faint they were dismissed as cosmic noise. But they came in perfect sync with Earth's vibration cycles. As if something out there was responding. NASA, ESA, and CNSA quietly reinstated a joint monitoring protocol under codename Project Harmonia, the public never heard of it. But leaked metadata revealed what they were studying: not light, not radio, but resonance, a form of energy that existed somewhere between sound and gravity itself. And then, one night, a single data stream from the Lunar Gateway Station cut through the static, a visual spectrogram unlike anything ever seen before. When decoded, it revealed a 3D projection, a sphere, fractal in nature, expanding and contracting like a living organism. At its center, 9 points of light, spinning slowly in formation. The same pattern found inside the Buga sphere. The same geometry as Atlas' internal structure. 9 nodes, one network. Dr. Burns' last message, recorded hours before his disappearance, still circulates among those who dare to listen. They were never visitors. They were builders. They were always here waiting for something to wake them up. And we just did. The hum is still there. Some nights you can hear it faintly, especially in radio silence, far from cities. A low vibration, almost like a whisper beneath the stars. And if you listen closely enough, you might feel the strange sensation that the universe is listening back. The screen fades to black. The hum builds into a deep cosmic rumble.